Well, good morning.
Hello.
Good to see you.
You too. How are you?
I am good. I am so excited because tomorrow I get to go visit my daughter,
Yay.
go see her, and just experience her while she has that baby still in her belly because it should be born end of April or beginning of May. We have a May 3rd due date.
Gotcha.
So we have
Awesome.
all girls 5 days planned out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Just the two of you?
Just the two of us. It's going to
Yay.
Yes, I'm super excited about that. So welcome everybody. So glad that you're here. Hello, Mr. Vern. Hello, Miss Kat.
Good morning or afternoon or in between.
Yeah, something like that. Elaine, good to see you here, cousin. Christo.
Hey.
And we've got Lorelai and Lisa. Have fun. All right. Today is March 17th. So Dr. V's got the background for us. Appropriate. Yeah. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Same to you.
So fun, so fun.
I got my orange Speedos on.
Is that what we wear on St. Patrick's Day?
if you really want to get to them, yeah, that's what you do. You wear orange. They don't like orange.
Oh, that's so funny. Very cool. So Lorelai, during last night's class, you said, oh, you should talk about this in the class tomorrow. And I thought, well, we'll see. We'll see what I get inspired with in the shower. And well, I'll be darned.
Did you get inspired with it?
Yes, we're going to talk about that. So
it's so brilliant and it's so simple. Yeah, just thank you.
Yeah, so we will expand on that. And so thank you so much for being here. So excited. And today's conversation, the title for this is really simple, is from confusion to clarity. The Course in Miracles is the, I'm going to say, easiest, simplest, clearest explanation I have ever found of how to awaken and how we fell asleep. So we operate in confusion because we don't know how we fell asleep. And until we understand how we got into that mess of falling asleep, we cannot get out of it. It's very simple. How you get into a house, well, you have to find your way out, but you got to know how you got in there. You didn't just appear there. You either entered through a window, through a door, you came in, from upstairs, you walked. You need to understand how you got to where you are so that you know how to exit. Most of us are inside of this illusion, and it's an illusion, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we are in this illusion thinking this is all there is, and never realizing that we're in this house that if we got out of it, we would have a much more exciting experience because we wouldn't be confined to only one experience of what is possible. And right now, we are in the midst of a shift in consciousness to move us out of the limitation of what we think is reality so that we can then expand our experience. And when we expand our experience of reality, we will actually be able to create a reality that we prefer. Now that we have contrast between the insanity of the ego's world, what the ego has made of life, to creating an experience that is so much more enjoyable, so much more expansive. And we really, truly have been convinced that limitation is a lot. We don't know. We don't really fully understand what a lot is. We don't understand what infinity is because the mind is so focused on, well, we want to get a certain amount of money. We want to get a certain amount of rate. We want to have race. We want to have X amount of dollars in the bank account. And right now, the world is starting to hear big numbers. We used to hear millions, and then it was billions. Now we're hearing trillions. I heard the other day beyond quadrillion, and I was like, oh my gosh, that our mind cannot think that big. when it is confined to the linear thinking of the ego. However, the fifth dimension of consciousness that we are moving, ascending toward, and ascending, expanding, it's all the same word, because it's not up, it's out. What is happening is that we have to blow our mental limitations to allow for expansiveness, to allow for unlimited to become our reality, to become something that we can actually experience. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute everybody just so we don't have any background noise as I let people come in. But today we're gonna look at a couple of different things, and then we're going to piece them together. So one is we have to understand the clarity piece first, and then we're going to talk about the confusion, and then we're going to look at the way that we are moving out of the confusion in a way that will make more sense. And this is, Lorelei, what we were talking about last night. So to keep things simple, even though we want to wake up and out of the duality, we want to move beyond dualistic thinking, you know, that everything is two and separated. But until we are completely aligned with the truth of God, we have to look at duality, break it down, because as when we begin to break down duality, how did duality get us confined and create the suffering that it has? Until we see clearly how duality created suffering, we won't be able to say no to it. So we're gonna look at duality. So there is God. God is all there is. And then there is our ability, God-given ability to block God as being our awareness of all there is. So think about it this way. The only analogy, well, the best analogy that I use is when my children were little and it was Halloween time, they would put on a costume. Let's use, you know, my son, Tony. Tony would put on the mask of the Grim Reaper. He knew he was Tony, but he was pretending to be the Grim Reaper. And he even had this mask that he could squeeze, like this red stuff that would come through his, you know, in front of his face. And all the kids thought, ooh, that's so scary. And Tony felt so cool that he was scaring his friends. But he knew it was a mask. He didn't get lost inside of having a mask. And I didn't mind that he wore the mask. I didn't mind that he was pretending to be the Grim Reaper. So God, in its wisdom, has said to all of its children, and we are its children, you can wear whatever costume you want to wear. It's okay. And when you're done playing with that costume, you can take it off. So for us to be able to put on the costume, we have to accept the idea that we can be other than who we are. That is what gives rise to the ego. So to understand what has happened to us, we need to break this down. Thick dark marker. We have to break it down to really, really understand the distinctions between God and the ego. And we're going to keep it super simple. To be able to really understand the essence of God, we need to know that it is eternal. And to be able to understand that it is eternal, we need to know that it is energy. So we're going to call it energy, and it's eternal. So it goes on forever and forever and forever. Then some of the other things that we need to understand, that if energy is eternal and it just continues, it must be one, because you can't have eternal over here and something else over there, then this wouldn't be eternal. So this must be inside of what is eternal. So there's this eternalness, and it must all be one. When everything is one, it's not fighting with each other. It's aware. I mean, there is a peace that exists inside of what is one. And inside of what is one, and there is peace, there is this thing called love. So oneness And if there's love, there's joy. So what is it that the Creator has allowed us to do? And if you really want to get down to it, we are the Creator, allowing ourselves to do what we're doing. So it's not like it's some other entity out there saying, okay, Laina, you can go do this. It's that I am the creative source. I and the Father, Mother, God are one, as Jesus taught us, as so many other teachers have taught us. And in that oneness, in that knowingness that we are all connected, knowing that I'm energy, knowing that I live forever, one with all that is, experiencing peace because I'm at one-ment with it. I am loving what is, because if it's here, it's created by me to experience me in all the different ways that me can be experienced in an eternal substance, consciousness, mind, whatever you want to call it, that is infinitely creative. So what's eternal is full. It's full of creativity that we cannot even fathom in our linear minds, egoic minds. So then what is the ego? It thinks it is matter. It thinks it is physical. Therefore, it values the body. It doesn't think it's eternal. It thinks it's finite. This is why we have the birth to death. And when we look at our lives from birth to death, oh, that's it. It's finished. We don't really understand our eternalness, and this gives rise to fear. Well, these two things. So fear is a construct that we experience when we think we have a finite amount of time here, and our body, which is what to the ego is all that matters. Now, all of a sudden, the thing that matters the most, when it's going to go, it activates a heck of a whole lot of fear. So because we see bodies, we see ourselves as other. This is what creates duality and the experience that there are others here. So instead of oneness and knowing that we're connected, we think that we're separate. And in this separation of two-ness, we create conflict. Conflict leads to war. So of course, when you've got war, when you've got conflict, it's going to instill fear. That's just the way that it is. And hate. And that takes our joy away. The joy then shifts to judgment. So the confusion is that we believe this is who we are. The clarity is the recognition that we are pretending to be separate from God to have a human experience. The Course wants us to realize that we can have a happy dream. We have descended into this planet, excuse me, for a reason, to have a human experience, for God to experience itself in otherness, in the experience of separation, not to make it a bad thing, not to turn it into conflict and war, but to have an experience of what it's like to touch, to see, to feel, to activate those senses that allows us to have a very physical experience, not to be confined by it, not to be defined by it, but rather as just one more way that the source of all that is can experience all that is. Because how else is God going to experience ice cream if it doesn't have a mouth and a hand to, put it in its mouth, and the ability to taste it, the smell of, this flavor versus that flavor, and to be able to have those sensory experiences? Well, the infinite source of all that is had to forget that it is all that is and infinite to have a finite experience. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an ego mind that has us block a lot of our awareness. It blocks our infinite knowledge. That's why it's very difficult for us to think of really big numbers, because the ego is limitation. It is by definition a block. It's a block to infinity. And inside of that blocking infinity, it creates a little box, and we all live inside of this little box. So we're all stuck inside of this house thinking that that's all that there is. And obviously we know that we're not just in a house, but we confine ourselves, many people, to just one state or just one country. A lot of people never travel. And then we confine ourselves to thinking that we're just in one planet. Well, we are part of something grand, and it's eternal, it's infinite, there's no end to it. So the more clarity that we gain, the more we can begin to put things into perspective. The perspective allows us to make peace with our physicalness, accept that we are going to have a finite experience, birth to death, recognize that death is just the completion of a cycle, it's the completion of a turn on the planet, and that every single time we come into the planet through the process of incarnations, what we are doing is now ascending out of the finite little box we put ourselves in before. So you guys remember this list. So in the beginning, when Source decides to have a human experience, we came in, we were on this planet, we were happy people, we lived in Lemuria, we were Pleiadians. It doesn't matter what maybe galaxy far away you think you came from. We're beginning to hear about when this planet was seeded with humans and when it was started. And I follow, for me, the story that feels true to me is that we began our physical incarnation as the Lemurians, which were seeded by the Pleiadians. So they operated in bliss for thousands of years, operated in bliss. Over time, the mind that thought of itself as a separate body, those who began to think in terms of limitation, of separation, of mine, yours, little by little, as we began to enter into duality and see others, we entered into conflict and war and began the process of conquering one another. Humanity, little by little, over thousands of years, descended into a very small story of itself. So what is happening to us now is that we are reversing. The process is reversing. It has to, because what is one and eternal is not designed to be confined and experience limitation and annihilation the way that we're going. So the way humans are going, if left to the devices of those who are totally, completely, not completely, 99.9% disconnected from the truth of who they are pulling humanity down into the level, as we talked about before, that evil frequency, that evil energy, which is nothing more than the veil. Evil is the same letters as veil. So those who have the veil the most pulled over their eyes are calling humanity down to keep going further down. And what further down is just to make sure that we have an extinction. Well, that's not going to happen to us. It's not going to happen to us because many of us are waking up and beginning the process of ascension, of moving through the layers of limitation and expanding our mind to accept the truth of who we are. So the confusion is because our mind was filled with misinformation. The Course in Miracles calls it that. It's just misinformation, wrong information. God's not going to punish anybody for making that mistake because we have chosen to have that experience. And one of the beautiful things in this whole game, we have a lifeline. We have lots of lifelines. While humanity has been dilly-dallying with the ego and pretending that this is all we are, we've had lifelines. We've had masters that have come onto the planet to bring us truth. We have found it. We have discovered it. We have dug it up. It comes from, channeled information. It comes from above. It comes from below the ground. We keep discovering things in the ground, ancient texts. So the lifelines are there. Lots of information is coming our way because the way that we're going into density, we're about as low as we can get, other than wiping everybody out. And there are some who want to do that. There are some who want to take us even further, but there are too many of us who are saying, no, we're not going to play the game that way. For those who are waking up, and are on that journey of ascension, we need to get really clear about what our truth is. We need to understand that we're powerful creators. We are not the effect of this, we are the cause of it. We have the mind that thinks and experiences. So if you don't like what you experience, don't think about what you don't like. Think about what you prefer to experience, so that then we give power to what we want to see as our new reality. But you can't go to the new reality talking about what's not working in the old. It's just not, it can't happen, because our attention is focused on what is. We are confused. We are not utilizing our power to say, hey, the game is over. I'm tired of it. It's boring. Time to play a new game. So I want to share from A Course in Miracles. This is a lesson. This is lesson 47. And the title of lesson 47, and I'm going to read just a little bit of it to kind of set the stage. God is the strength in which I trust. The Course in Miracles, the lessons are divided into two parts. The first part of the lessons, the first 200 lessons, are attempting to get us to understand that our mind has been conditioned to believe that we are just a body, that we're separate, that we're humans, and the ego is our master. The ego is nothing more than a thought system, a belief system. All the beliefs that we believe that make this so is what forms the ego. If you don't think those beliefs, you don't have an ego, because ego is a decision to block truth. So how do you block truth? You think lies. You think things that are not true. I mean, it's really that simple. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. So the confusion is very, very challenging to get out of when the mind is looking for a logical way in the madness. You cannot find logic in the madness. You've got to move to the place where you begin to know the truth of who you are and activate reason. Remember, reason is up here. We've got to move beyond the mental aspect of the ego and move into higher reasoning, which allows for a lot more than the mental logic mind of the ego allows for. So to look at this lesson, God is the strength in which I trust. You have to understand that the Course wants you to break down your psychology and to see you've been trusting the ego. When we made ego our master, we trust the things of the world. We trust the things of matter. That becomes what matters to us. And the Course wants us to begin to open up to, well, what would happen if we trusted God and trusted in that which is energy, just energy? Well, what happens is you begin to play. You begin to imagine again. You begin to use your imagination to create something totally different that's never been before on this planet. Well, we had aspects of it, but the way that the world is evolving, the Lemurians didn't have some of the technologies that we can have now, because the way the mind is, the mind of God, how we're accessing new ideas, but we would return to the exact same things that the Lemurians valued, which is the connection with God, the connection with one another, back to the oneness, because they lived in peace and they experienced love and joy as a constant state of beingness. So God is the strength in which I trust. The lesson says, if you are trusting your own strength, this will be the ego strength, you have every reason to be apprehensive, anxious, and fearful. What can you predict or control? Can't do anybody? We can't even predict the weather. Even the experts can never more than 50-50 right. So doctors don't know what chance you're going to get. I mean, kind of have an idea maybe what happens. You got pharmaceuticals creating products. They don't really know what's going to happen. Some people are okay, some people are not okay. We can't predict. We don't know what's going to happen 2 days from now. We have a general sense, but we don't really know how one thing is going to affect another on this massive planet. So no wonder we are in a state of chaos all the time, because we think we can predict and control. And of course we can't. So what can you predict or control? What is there in you that can be counted on? Is there anything in you that you know consistently you can count on? I don't know about you, but there's nothing in me that in Laina, in my egoic mind, that I could consistently count on. I change my mind all the time. What I could count on 3 days ago is not what I can count on today. So let's keep going here. What would give you the ability to be aware of all the facets of any problem and to resolve them in such a way that only good can come of it? This is where we begin to see that the ego, when it is problem solving, it is typically problem solving a problem of wanting to avoid bad things from happening, wanting to keep things from getting worse. However, the Holy Spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, when we begin to recognize that it sees everything and knows everything because it's in all of us, it's in 8 billion people on the planet, everything that God is attempting to do is for the oneness to experience the peace, the love, and the joy that are, it's just what you are when you know what you are. It's what you feel, experience. Then it goes on to say, what is there in you that gives you the recognition of the right solution and the guarantee that it will be accomplished? Of course, you can do none of these things. I love it. Jesus is very clear. No, you can't. You cannot do any of these things, but our ego mind makes us think that we can. To believe that you can is to put your trust where trust is unwarranted and to justify fear, anxiety, depression, anger, and sorrow. Who can put his faith in weakness and feel safe? Yet who can put his faith in strength and feel weak? God is your safety in every circumstance. His voice speaks for him in all situations and in every aspect of all situations, telling you exactly what to do to call upon his strength and his protection. There are no exceptions because God has no exceptions. And the voice which speaks for him thinks as he does. Today, try to reach past your own weakness to the source of real strength. Confusion ends when you place your trust in the source of real strength. That means we've got to come to the place of realizing that we really, truly have had the power all along to create our reality. We, before we incarnate, make a decision to have this human experience. For many, many incarnations, we have been little by little descending into the world as the world was moving down in density to the place that it just can't go anymore. That's why we've had lots of civilizations that ended. They killed themselves and then started back up again. And the reason it starts back up again is because life is eternal. It is about extending itself. But we have averted the extinction of this human race. We are now in the process of ascending, going from we were in the elementary school years, moving into the middle school years. We have been bratty middle schoolers. And now we're about to graduate into the high school years when we get to be a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more freedom, and to begin to explore our own individuality, where the ego operated in homogenizing everything. We needed everything to conform to feel safe because we needed everything to look a certain way for us to forget that what we are is infinite. And in our infinity, there are so many different expressions. And because our minds have been filled with reasons to operate in conflict with one another and have wars, there's a lot of cleaning up of the mind that needs to take place. So the first part of the lessons is literally a psychological course. You are going through a cleaning up of the thinking, allowing yourself to receive new information, to begin to give you some clarity about what's been going on, because deep down inside, there comes a moment that everything clicks because it's your truth. And the lifelines that we've had, like Jesus, are just telling us the truth of who we are, trying to remind us of the truth of who we are. So you're not going to be discovering any new information. You're going to be returning to what has always been there, that is eternal forevermore. Like what we talked about last week, first information. So you gather all this information, you begin to see, oh yeah, now this makes sense. The integration part is the releasing the idea that you're just human and integrating into your reality your divinity, accepting your eternalness, moving to the place like the Hindus and the Buddhists that is comfortable with reincarnation, is comfortable with the idea of oneness, is comfortable with the fact that we're made of energy, like quantum science has been teaching us. Now, to be able to integrate all of that, you have to already be feeling a sense of connection to the divine, because the integration part is the stepping towards that transformation that needs to take place. And to transform, we need to be willing to transcend our physical form. So this process of clarity, it is really, I don't know how long it takes for each person. It depends on how many lifetimes you've had. It depends on the teachings that you have studied in this lifetime. I don't know. But the one thing that I can tell you, you are always in control of how quick or how slow you progress in this lifetime, in any lifetime, because you are the one who is deciding to block your truth that you can trust God, or to remain on the side of trusting the ego, because it's really simple. God is the safety in every circumstance. You're not going to go anywhere. None of us is going to disappear, maybe from the planet, but not from consciousness. So God is our ultimate safety. His voice speaks for him in all situations and in every aspect of all situations, telling us exactly what it is that is called upon for us to receive that strength and that protection. It's not coming from out there, it's emanating from within. So the transformation process is literally handing power over to the source within. That requires that we get still, we get quiet, and we really cultivate a relationship with that power inside of us. That, as Marianne wrote in her book, A Return to Love, about A Course in Miracles, our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. And the reason we don't want to accept our power is because we've been thinking somebody else has had it. And mommy had it, daddy had it, the teacher had it, the boss had it, the government had it. Something outside of you has power. So we are little by little bringing that power back in by questioning every thought, every belief that has us begin to recognize that this, when you question it, is not so solid after all. We don't have to hate one another. We don't have to be in conflict. We don't have to be in war. Those things are completely made up by minds that are disconnected. So let me stop there. And then I want to show you the way it's come to me and how we're helping each other to move out of this insanity that we're in. So unmute yourself or let me know if anybody has a comment or a question, whatever it might be. So we can talk about that before we keep going. Ding. All right. No, we'll just keep going. Okay. And just let me know if anybody has any questions. So as humanity, over all this time, oh, Lisa, were you going to say something?
Can you just say that again? Because that really hit me. Our greatest fear is,
That we're
go ahead.
powerful beyond measure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and that's in Mary. Well, actually, it's from A Course in Miracles. You know, the Course is letting us know that that is what we're afraid of, all the power that we have. But because we've grown up believing power was external, and the ego has had us justify that we're all victims in one way or another, it's very difficult to accept that we're the ones who created our experience. We're the ones creating our reality. And that is where our greatest fear is, that we're powerful, because we don't want to say, you mean I created my suffering? Well, it's not until we say, yep, I contributed to the mess of this world. I contributed to feeling disempowered. I contributed to the things that are just, create and perpetuate pain and suffering. Until we can say, yes, I did that, we can't then undo it. They go hand in hand, because it is all part of the journey. And we have just, used our power unknowingly. We're unconscious that we had that much power. So let's look at what is happening right now, so that you can kind of get a sense of maybe where you are in terms of your role in this process of ascension that we're in. So for many, many, many thousands of years, humanity has been, people are born and we come in, we descend, we stay here. So we have been operating at a very low frequency. So let me put on my cute little blue people there. This is like 8 billion people. Then, as we have been learning and studying and doing the work that the Course wants us to do, which is understand our psychology, understand what's in our mind, understand what we believe about ourselves, because it's what we believe about ourselves as a human that blocks us from the awareness of the truth of who we are as a divine being. So those of us who are doing that work are lightening up. We are moving out of density and becoming a little lighter. So I'm going to put and then, of course, those who are operating in the darkest, which in the Map of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins' book, he calls it evil, because it's a veil. So when we understand what evil means, it's just nothing more than a solid veil that has been drawn, a pretty solid veil, between our idea of who we are and the truth of God inside of us. When we become completely disconnected, and we cannot be totally disconnected, because if you're alive, if you're breathing, you're breathing life. You're experiencing the life source that God is. You live, which, interesting, the word evil, the veil, it's the word live as well. So what is live when blocked with a veil of forgetfulness turns evil? When it is completely not in alignment with oneness, because it operates in duality, and duality is all about winners and losers, and it's about lack. It's about not enough, so I got to hoard it and keep it and protect it. But those who descend into that evilness, get pretty dark and dense. So, and it's usually not as many. And we've talked about that before, how the less, the 1% of the 1% control the world, appears to control the world, because they understand psychology. They just don't really understand the power of love. They don't, because they know how to control minds, but they don't understand love. They don't understand heart. If they did, they couldn't do what they do to others. They could not go into war if they knew love. It just would not be possible. So quite a few have experienced the level of awakening that has allowed them to maybe not necessarily be aware that they are awake. And by awake, I mean very clearly on this planet, hearing guidance that is telling them how to move humanity to a whole new frequency, which is really fascinating. Because I used to think that to be awake, you had to be all spiritual, and you had to talk spiritual talk and lingo. But I have come to realize that no, you don't. You can resonate at a pretty high frequency and not even know about spiritual teachings, not even have opened a book of spirituality or attended a workshop, but inside of you, you are aligned with a knowingness of our oneness and you might be a little distracted in the physical form. You might even be a little harsh and a little maybe not so nice to your neighbor or to somebody. But deep down inside, when the time comes to follow your life's purpose, it is always going to be in service to humanity. There's no way around that. So on this planet right now, there are quite a few beings that have realized that where we were headed was absolutely to destruction. And for a very long time, they've been attempting to turn the Titanic around. Instead of everybody getting pulled down into basically World War III, where we're just going to destroy the planet, throw off a couple of atomic bombs, maybe you only need one. I don't understand those things. And that would be the end of it. To avoid that, there are some who were born specifically to help move us out of here. And those few, which is about almost as many as the few that are pulling us down, doesn't take that many to want to pull us out. Those few that are attempting to move us out of here, they don't really need to know about spirituality, but they know that they're listening to a voice that is beyond their little mental construct of themselves, because what they're doing is for the greater good of all. And what I wanted to share with you to see if you can find yourself in one of these three groups. There are the leaders who are moving us through the density of the ego mind, pulling us out of slumber. Then there are the followers who are willing to go with those leaders. And again, the leaders, don't let that word mean that it's like the Messiah, because it doesn't necessarily have to be that. The followers are those who are willing to listen to what the leaders are saying and run it through their own internal guidance and feel the resonance of the truth in it. They can sort out what might be a little bit off, but they find the trace of truth that they align with and know that they are listening to those who are attempting to move humanity to a higher state of consciousness. And it's really simple to know how to figure out the states of consciousness. The ego operates in control, with the promise of safety. And our soul, when you're connected to God, you're operating inside of a sense of freedom with the promise of sovereignty. Very, very different. Safety and sovereignty are two totally different things. And I know we've talked about this before. So to really get clear in where are you in this process, figure out where you are in these three categories. The leaders, I talked about the followers. The third category is the resistors. They are resisting anything that allows for movement. Why? Because they have been controlled into safety. Anybody who feels safe is not going to leave the comfort of their home. They're not going to leave the house that they think that they're safe inside of, or the system that they believe keeps them safe. But what we don't understand is that when you're seeking safety, you sell out, you sell your soul. Now, you can't sell it forever. It's just in this lifetime, you're just going to have that experience, and the box is going to collapse on you. So humanity basically has very distinct groups. The leaders are leading humanity to freedom. Now you can wonder, well, how we know, who is this leader? We know, you can feel those who are speaking that are in service to humanity. It resonates in your beingness. And what God wants us to understand right now is that all of this is happening inside the mind of God. There is no way that what is energy is going to be destroyed. No way. So we have to find the resonance within us of beginning to trust the truth of our eternalness, so that we can start letting go of some of the fear, if not completely, of death. Because while we are afraid of death, we are going to seek safety. While we're seeking for safety, we're going to give up control. We're going to give somebody control over us. And when we give up our control to somebody else, we have to give up freedom, and sovereignty goes with it. You cannot be a sovereign being over who you are if you think you're just a body that can be hurt. Sovereignty means that you are aligning with that truth of your eternalness. And again, fear of death is really the primary way that those who operate in the low densities of evil can keep anybody inside of that mind control. Because if you're not attached to your body, like Jesus demonstrated for us when he was crucified on the cross, he forgave all these people. These people don't know what they're doing. Why? Because they're confused about who they are. They're totally, completely unaware that this is a divine plan. This is an incredible, incredible journey that we're experiencing in many ways. And this doesn't make sense until you get further along in your journey. But in a way, it's a game of hide and seek. The source of all that is hiding in each incarnation, playing the role of being human, descending until the lifelines begin to activate inside of us the truth that begins to pull us out of the nightmare that the ego has created. To move above the line is to create the happy dream. The Course wants us to know that while we are having the experience of being human, we can do it in a happy way. But you can't be happy unless you are free. That's why our founding documents say life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's a lifeline that we received. Our founding fathers received direct channeling, direct information that was communicated through those who were very clear. They lost their fear of death. They wanted to be free, left the motherland, crossed the ocean blue, and landed over here in this new world, attempting to create a new life. They were willing to risk life and limb because freedom was more important to them than safety. Well, humanity right now is being divided, and we're going to see this division get stronger and stronger by those who want freedom versus those who want safety. And those who want freedom are listening to the leaders who are speaking of that freedom being granted to us by our Creator. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing a lot more people talking about God now. And not a God of fire and brimstone and all of that, but it's people talking about their relationship with God, feeling a certainty inside of them that is allowing them to get grounded in the truth. Very simple. God is the strength in which I trust. Leaders are trusting in the strength of God. That to me is a beautiful thing that is allowing me to really open up my ears and listen to those messengers of this truth that are attempting to lead us out of the insanity that the ego mind has created, because they are recognizing that they want the greater good for all. Because until we realize that the greater good for all is also the greater good for us, we will be deluded into the game of competition, into the game of control. And guess what would happen? If we have a group that, let's say, decides to control the world, and it's happening. We see people who want to control the world. All you have to do is really get your head out of the sand and pay attention to what's happening in the world, track the movement of the money, track the rules and regulations that are created. Because to me, the best use of my spirituality, my awareness of who I am, was to put it in service to helping me see the leaders and those who are attempting to take us down the path of destruction. Because that's the only two ways you can go, up or down. Or even if you look at it sides, it doesn't matter. You're either going to go into the place of lack of freedom, or you're going to go into total freedom. That's just the only way it can go. But as we are seeing those who are being scared and into believing that they need to give up their freedoms and their sovereignty, they are in resistance of change, not because they're bad people, but because they're afraid. They are totally afraid. And true leaders are not attempting to scare them. Notice, I'm sure you have, how those who you believe are telling the truth, when you feel it in resonance in your heart, they're not attacking others. There could be some attacking words, there could be some unkind words, but it's not typically how they speak. And if they do, you forgive that egoic human side. But what you find is a certainty, a trusting that with God, all things are going to be okay, because humans who sell to us the idea of why we should be afraid and they should be the ones who protect us are basically lying to us, perpetuating the story that we are not inherently capable of hearing a voice, capable of having an experience with a power greater than us that knows, can see the big picture, and it always leads to good. It has to, because that which created all that is not going to destroy itself. Otherwise, there'd be nothing left. But that which thinks it's separate from the creator and it's creating its own thing can make a big mess here. So let me stop here and see if anybody has any comments or questions, because being really clear that we've been confused, having to figure out the truth of who we are and aligning with that truth while accepting that we have bodies, accepting we're going to go through birth and death. That's just part of the game. Accepting that there are people who are operating in separation. We can play that game with consciousness, with awareness, and still be part of the movement that is following the intuition that is getting activated inside of us, because some that are listening to God, some that are in that state of hearing what's in service to humanity, when they hear that and we hear them say that, it's not that we're following them, it's that we feel the resonance inside of us. We may not be fully aligned with our divine self, but we're no longer being sold lies by our egoic mind, which is why we can tell when others are giving us lies, telling us things that we know are not true to us. But to be able to move into high school, you've got to be pretty much completing your middle school year. So you can't be down here in kindergarten, first, second grade and be afraid. It's just not, you're not going to be able to hear this message. Like when you were in third grade, you couldn't listen to a ninth grader talk about whatever calculus. It didn't compute. All right. Comments, thoughts. I want to hear from you, please. I know it's a lot. Need a little time to marinate. Bottom line is that we're powerful beyond measure. And our clarity is within our control.
So should we have t-shirts made, leaders, followers, resistors?
Yeah.
I'll share something. I've been really enjoying this. Last week was really powerful. I went back and I guess I pulled out the last 20 or 30 minutes, which I think should be a program by itself. It was very clear, and I commend you on stepping up and sharing your understandings. I just finished a project for myself. I reread the Constitution. I reread the Bill of Rights, every word. I read the entire Federalist Papers, word by word. And I think if people did nothing but that, if they would just read that information and then look at what's going on now, they would get a great insight. They would see a lot of incongruency about what people are saying and what is really there. And I also did a lot of research as to, our founding fathers and what that meant and where they came through and the angst that they went through and the challenges that they went through. And definitely that how they were influenced by their spiritual beliefs and drawing it from all over the world because, Madison, when he sat down to create the Constitution, he studied all of the ancient governments way back with the Greeks and the Egyptians. So this is a long heritage of looking and pulling from the best of the best. And I'm so glad I took the time to do that. And then what I run into is then when I have a conversation with somebody, and I'll make a statement and then they'll want to counter that, which is okay. What happens for me then is I want to ask them, well, have you read this information? You can have your thoughts and your ideas and everything. I mean, everybody should have what they need to have for themselves. But I'd sure like to be able a dialogue with somebody that has read the same information and really did it, and then have a conversation around what's happening and the pros and the cons of each direction to go. I don't find that. I just don't find it. It's amazing to me that's where they're at. And if a person won't put the time in, at least to explore, because that's what's under attack right now. I mean, if the Constitution goes, and everything else will go. And all the rest of it doesn't make any difference because without that solid foundation, everything falls apart. But if you're not willing to look at the foundation, then I can't talk to you. It's like, and I know that might sound egotistic and I don't mean it that way. There was a time in my life where I would have come from that space. I would say, my God, you can't fix stupid. That's not exactly the way to get the right conversation going. Yeah, that's what I was feeling inside of me. But I think that, what you're sharing in the concepts, if people could really understand, because for years, I've always, I'm thinking from a personal level myself, I've always considered myself, I've said it, I think I said on here before, that I was a compassionate conservative. I was deeply into spiritual teachings, yet I was into capitalism and what it really means and then how it works. And you can't, I said business is the 21st century mystery school. I would be making comments like that and people would just look at me like he is crazy. And I said, you can have a foot in each world. And that's how you have balance. If you're standing on one foot, either one, you're going to have problems. So you have to be able to embrace both facets. And I think that the biggest part of it is and you made it very, very clear last week that since we started these classes in different ways, is that what's most important is that I want to have freedom to be and develop who I am. And I want everybody to have that. I don't want anybody to be able to control anybody else's way of thinking or being or developing. And unfortunately, there's where the issue is. That it seems like that's where I'm at. But when I talk to somebody else that is polarized, really polarized, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, no, it's got to be this way because of all these bad things that have happened before. I don't know how you have that dialogue, Laina. I really don't. I don't know how to have that type of dialogue. There's a group called, I can't remember what it is now. It's a group where supposedly representatives from both sides get together in Zoom sessions and they talk to each other. And and everything's kumbaya. I visited a couple times and I didn't feel that, but it just seems to me that in today's world right now, that you can call it religion, you can call it spirituality, you can call it anything that you want to, whatever you're most comfortable with, but you've got to bring that out as part of the filter when you're looking at what's going on around you. And it's become more and more obvious that that's happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the fear is so great and people won't do the work themselves. They want somebody else to tell them what to do. And they get frightened when somebody says you're totally free. And that, I mean, so I guess I'm talking too long. I don't mean to do that. It's just that that's what I get. And it's so great to have what you're doing. More people need to hear what you're saying, what you're doing, because it's obvious that you're comfortable with a foot in each world. I mean, to me anyway.
Have to be.
And you're there, and you're using spiritual concepts, but without demanding that people accept them. You're asking them to test, and that's the ultimate test of any spiritual development. I can share a concept and an idea or a thought, and here's what I've been doing, but until you're willing to work with it and test it yourself, it doesn't mean anything. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they want to be taken care of. And they've been educated that way. Our educational system for the last 50 years has just done nothing but move people away from sovereignty and moving into dependence. So that's part of what the issue is. So what do? I guess, like you're saying, the great divide is in the process. And if that's what it takes, then that's what it's going to take. But I think the key is this, is that expect the unexpected, but be prepared for what happens.
Bingo, bingo. And this is what you were just saying. Let me read this in the lesson 47 that we were reading. God is the strength in which I trust. If you are trusting in your own strength, you have every reason to be apprehensive, anxious, and fearful. What can you predict or control? What is there in you that can be counted on? What would give you the ability to be aware of all facets of any problem and to solve them in such a way that only good can come of it? And when we get really clear that we have placed our trust in the creative source, you can expect the unexpected, because the ego mind has a set of expectations that we don't want. We don't want to expect more of that. So when you open up your mind, you are going to expect the unexpected, and the unexpected is that things are going to shift. But for the shift to happen, and for those who say that we are conscious to be okay, we have to recognize that everybody is creating their own reality. And like you said, people are going to make their own choices out of fear, because fear is nothing more than a lack of awareness of our power. And when we are unaware, because we have been indoctrinated, completely dumbed down, had no idea how dumbed down we have been. But it's because that which has attempted to control does it very subtly, very subtly. And it's like the old story. I'm sure you guys have heard that, when a baby elephant is little, you put a chain or rope around its leg, and it won't go too far because it's little. Well, as it gets older, you keep that rope on it, it will try to go away, and it can't leave. And when it's older, you can leave the rope untied to the pole. The elephant will not leave, because the feeling of the rope on its leg lets it know you can't go anywhere. Well, humanity has been operating like that. The rope around our leg is the ego mind telling us that we're not sovereign. And those who know enough about psychology use that to control us and keep us from understanding our own psychology. And one of the things that has become really clear to me is that spirituality is one of the things that the controllers use to control us. We are allowed to study a lot of spirituality. That's why certain teachers make it to the New York Times bestsellers. The ones who tell us about crystals and cards and processes, and it's all about seeking the light, which is why a book that was written by Lorelei, we were talking about this, I think last night, written by a woman that, to me, she channeled this information, and she wrote the book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Her name is Debbie Ford. She passed away 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And what the title of that book says is, as long as you're chasing the light and don't look at your dark side, you will never find your source of power. Because in seeking the light, all you want to do is make things better. You want to be surrounded by the latest color, that is, a fifth dimensional color, a seventh chakra color, and attending all of these wonderful places where you go to learn about God. But don't look at your psychology, because if you look at your psychology, then you'll find out that, well, you know what? You don't need to go pray for those things to come to you. You are that. But to accept that you are the power, the Course in Miracles is very clear. It wants us to understand that we are one with the creative source. There is no distinction except for one. God created us to create with the same power that it has, but we cannot not be what God created. We cannot undo ourselves because God created us that way. So we have use of the same power, but not to not be who we are, powerful beings pretending to not be powerful. So we can do that. And one of, there's so many things that are necessary right now. But I have found that the most important things that we can be is what the Course has taught me in what is known as the Manual for Teachers. And you know what, next week, let's explore the Manual for Teachers, because it gives us 10 characteristics that if you embody those characteristics, you become a leader. You become a leader in your own right. Maybe not, you may not get the knowledge about what to do to move the country or the economy or the political system or the education system. You may not get that download. Lots of people are getting those downloads, but you will be a leader inside of the group that you're in, because you will be listening to the voice for God that will consistently let you know to expect the unexpected. It gives you a sense of peace. I receive very clear guidance that I don't have a thing to worry about. And the reason I don't have a thing to worry about is because even if this body gets shot or whatever, I'm eternal. So my peace comes from knowing that I am not of this world. So to be in this world and not of it is easy for me now. And that is what we need to begin to embody, and it's part of our growth. So how do you practice those characteristics of a teacher of God, which are trusting, honesty, defenselessness, and patience, and gentleness, and open-mindedness, and tolerance, and joy? I mean, we got to practice being what we are, because we are so disconnected from knowing that joy is a constant state of being. But you can't have joy if you have fear. Fear blocks that consistent joy, enjoyment of life. And we've got to become those who are no longer afraid of what happens on the physical plane, so that we can be used as those who can have conversations that we may not be able to change the mind of those who have placed their trust in those who are promising to keep them safe, but we can influence a few who are just on the edge, that they might be resisting, but they're watching us, and they say, how come you're so peaceful? Because as things continue to get more insane, and they will, because the controllers are not going to be satisfied until they have total control. That's just the way the game goes. So for those who are seeking safety, they're going to begin to see that safety, and this visual is not too far-fetched, but safety is really a march to the slaughterhouse. It's a march to the complete giving up of freedom. To be able to begin to see what's going on, those who are in resistance of change are going to be observing those who are comfortable with what's happening and not afraid. Because the more that freedoms are taken away, the more the resistors are going to see, oh my gosh, it's like in the Holocaust. You may not be too afraid when you're being rounded up in the streets, but when you're marching towards the place where you're going to be executed, well, you're going to be in terror. Well, if you're around people who are peaceful, which is one of my favorite books, is written by Viktor Frankl, and the book is called, the title of it is Man's Search for Meaning. What meaning? This meaning. Viktor Frankl was talking about that connection with God allowed him to be at peace in the midst of having had his wife, who was expecting his child, to be killed. And he realized, you know what? All of these people who are doing that, because those who control want complete control, and that means they have to control you completely. They want total submission. Inside of that situation, Viktor Frankl decided, I know who we are. I found my meaning. I found your meaning. We're all the same. So to the guards who, that were charged with abusing people and hitting them and torturing them before they shot them, he had compassion for them. He realized, you know what, you guys are hurting. Nobody can be peaceful and happy when they're charged with hurting others, because it's not natural to our soul. Yes, you can kind of block that and become pretty hardened. But when we begin to get clear about the meaning of who we are, and we begin to connect with God within, it is practically impossible to not begin to feel compassion for one another. So the thing that is going to assist us, that the course wants us to get to, is to realize that we will find our salvation. And by salvation, the course means freedom. When we free everybody else from being responsible for our joy, when we find our joy simply because, or find that our joy exists simply because we're a child of God, we are one with that creative source. And at the very least, even if you don't find joy, joy, but you begin to recognize that if you chose to incarnate, you can at the very least enjoy the madness, enjoy the performance, be in a state of, I am in my joy, and enjoy what's taking place, because it's just giving us the ability for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see of what we don't want any more of. And that contrast, when accepted with peace, means that you'll do whatever it takes, because you're no longer afraid of death. You'll do whatever it takes, like a Martin Luther King Jr., like a Gandhi, like Jesus. You'll do whatever it takes to ensure that you stay in alignment with God and you follow the guidance that is given you, not afraid of death, because you get to come back, you get to incarnate and come back and be in a state of joy again, because you're eternal. What you are is energy that does not end. It simply transforms, it changes form. And while we are in the physical form, we are not in touch with our divinity. Not really. Maybe Sundays for 2 hours, possibly for some people, but to be in touch with our divinity is to really come to know the power that is inside of us. And that power demands absolute freedom, complete freedom. And it is not willing to sacrifice freedom for safety. Yes, Lorelei.
I just had a couple of thoughts I wanted to share. One was, isn't it really, on some level, isn't it about all of this just getting to neutral?
Yeah.
to get into the heart, I mean, to get to neutral.
There it is.
Yeah. I mean, no matter what it is, whatever we're upset about, or what this person is doing, or this one's not awake, or this one's not reading this information. I mean, and then the other thing that occurs to me is the lesson for today is I'm under no laws but God's. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. And tomorrow is I'm entitled to miracles. That's all I want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Because neutral, we don't understand our true meaning if we're judging other people. Because if we're judging them, we're wanting them to change what they're doing. So we're letting them know you're wrong. No one's judging and saying you're right. When we're judging, we're saying you're wrong, I'm right. And inside of that judgment is fear, always fear. I need to get them to change their mind so that I get to be okay. So the followers are learning to let go of the fear of death so that they can hear the voice of God inside and be under no laws but God's. Because the course is really clear. When we align and are following only God's laws, they lead to only one thing: oneness, peace, love, and be in a state of enjoyment. And to be inside of that joy, you have to be free. You have to be very clear that all of this is an experience. It's a temporary experience by an infinite source. So coming into that place of our true nature, well, it requires quite a bit of courage, and you have to get to neutral. Cannot judge, otherwise you're not going to be free.
Otherwise it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Exactly. Yes, Vern.
Yeah, this is a tricky area. And I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you want to go with this, but I feel I must put it on the table anyway. When I was 13, it was the first time I was introduced to martial arts. And this is way before it became monetarized, where people were out there, everybody wanted to, have a black belt and everything else. We didn't have black belts. We were given the highest rank we ever got was a midnight blue, because nobody attained black belt. But I was taught by a Shaolin heritage. And one of the reasons the martial arts were created was so that the priests could maintain their beliefs and their sovereignty and their safety and live the life that they wanted to live. And if anybody came in to forcibly try to change that or take that away from them, then they used the martial arts as a process of maintaining their sovereignty. Now, these were I would think, very spiritually oriented beings at that point. And so now the physicality comes into it. And this is where I hear a lot of discussions. It's true. Getting to neutral is the goal. But you can't get into neutral if somebody else has got you chained physically. Now you can say, yeah, but I'm chained physically, but I'm coming back again. And I understand all that, believe me. I guess where I'm at is that I'm at a place in my life right now where I see a lot of people around me that are frightened. There's a lot of fear around me, even people that want what we're talking about here. And yet they have no way of really protecting themselves or taking care of themselves if something comes in. And so this is an area that I'm really working with right now inside myself. I'm struggling with it every day almost now. And that is that I believe that in order for me to fulfill what I want to have based on what we're talking about here, I've got to be willing to step up. Even physically, I got to be able to step up.
Well, we do have a body for a reason.
But this is where, and I'm not saying you're not addressing it, because I think you are in a way, but there's going to come up when the divide comes. That's not going to just easily divide, and you be on your side and I'll be on my side, and everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be, I want your side as well. I want your side to be like my side, and if you don't want it, we're going to come and make it happen. I believe that that's how bad, when you say how bad it's going to get, that's the deepest darkness that I know of. And when that comes, then people that have the intentions that we're talking about here, I believe, have also got to be able to step up and defend that and make that happen. Now that's one of the things are give me liberty or give me death. They weren't talking about reincarnation. They weren't worried about anything else. They just said, right now, give me liberty or give me death. And there's an area that I don't see discussed at all. I really don't. I don't see it discussed in any of the Zoom sessions I've been in. I'd like to get your thoughts about it. Now, if you can't do it today, that's fine. I understand, but it's something that really is. So when I listen to you, I'm saying everybody needs to hear what Laina's saying. Everybody needs to understand all of this. But the bottom line is, thank God we can do it right now. We can have Zoom sessions right now. There's going to come a time here where somebody's going to try to take that away from us, where we can't share like we're talking about now. And somebody's going to have to step up in order to make sure that doesn't happen. And I see nobody talking about that except for extremists. There's a lot of extremists out there. And believe me, I've been contacted by a lot of them.
And they're labeled, they're labeled extremists to make them even.
Yeah. But I mean, there is extremists, and then there are people that are want the same things that we're talking about here. But, both, in other words, when you get two extreme groups that are conflict with each other, they're both in non-I land. Okay. What we're trying to do is, can you have sanity? Can you be spiritually focused and centered? And can you still step up and say, I'm willing to defend this. I'm willing to take the steps necessary to maintain what we have. And there's where it's kind of, I was at, one more thing. I was at Adventure Outdoors last week. I went over because a buddy of mine's a gunsmith there, and I was having some problems with it. And most of you know that I've been involved with weapons all my life, different types of weapons all my life. And I was there because I was having trouble with a trigger mechanism on a Glock that I have. And I went over there, and I stood there for 30 minutes. And he had said to me, Vern, look around the store. Have you noticed anything going on in the store? They couldn't keep the shells on the shelf. There were hundreds of people in that store in the middle of the day buying guns and everything else. I mean, it was weird. It had a real sick feel to me when I was there. And he said, this is going on every day, and it has every day since the election. He says it's every day. So I guess what I'm saying, when I see that going on, then it means, what do you do? Because if I say this to certain groups like this, spiritual groups, they'll say, oh, yeah, there's Vern. Boy, he's got guns and no, I'm sorry. That's not my intention. My intention is to be wise and prudent in what I do, but I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to allow somebody to control me and take away my beliefs.
No, I absolutely appreciate the question, and let me give you my sincere answer, and that is, I've thought about buying a gun.
Okay.
Even thought about going, and it's something that I was like, I would never hold a gun, but now I am very comfortable with the idea of going and learning how to shoot. And the reason is because we have a body. We're here to use this body. So there are two things that have to be looked at. My work is to get my mind, my psychology cleaned up, and to release my limited thoughts about myself so that I can receive the expanded notions of who I am. And the more my mind gets at peace with my eternalness and be in a state that death is not scaring me, the more I'm getting comfortable with, okay, then what do I have to do here? Because I do want to be one of those people that give me liberty or give me death. For me, that is an absolute goal. I don't know when we're going to get to the place that is going to happen, but we are going to have to face that possibility, because the way that the egoic mind has had control of this population of humanity, it is for the purpose of bringing us to the place where we say, give me safety instead of giving, it's like my safety is more important than anything. And once you want your safety, you give up
That's right.
your ability to be free. But guess what? Safety is death. In a way, it's death. You just now become dead inside. You lose you lose your joy, all of these things. You lose your joy, your peace, your love. You lose your connection to other people. It is being dead inside. And the ego wants us dead inside. The ego wants us to be totally and completely unhappy beings. That's the purpose of the ego, blocking love. It is a block to all of this. So I'm continuing on my journey. I don't know how I'm going to address those things if it comes to that, but I am very clear that it could come to that. Very clear that that potential is there. So yeah, we've got to address it. And the last people who are going to want to address that are those who are in resistance of the possibility that that could happen, because their mind is so fear-based. All they can hear is the glitter that they're putting on everything that is designed to give you safety. And their eyes are not seeing what's happening, their ears can't hear what's going on. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up, and we got to find our peace. Yes, Lorelei.
Just
Thank
one
you.
quick thing. Doesn't liberty somehow come with death of the ego?
It is.
I mean, that's what really,
Yeah.
that ultimately, that's what we're, yes, maybe death of the body, but that's what our goal is. I mean, isn't that the end game?
So think about it this way. What Jesus came to example for us, that we used it as, the crucifixion and the resurrection. What he was exempling for us is we have to be willing to die to the self. So what has us believe that this is who I am is the ego death. And if it means crucify the body, it means crucify the body. But he was giving us that example in a very dramatic way. But the meaning was, yes, you can kill the body, but the spirit is still alive. What the second coming of the Christ is for our spirits to wake up now and be fully alive, mind, body, spirit, not just a physical body that is alive, but mind, body, and spirit in aliveness, in alignment with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because if you don't value liberty at that level, liberty beyond the ego, you don't really know what liberty is. I didn't know what liberty was until I began to really feel that I did not want to have my life run by this little bitty voice in my head that had me operating in fear, even though I didn't think I was. But yeah, seeking safety, because we are playing out a drama. Course in Miracles says this is a script that's already written. So we're playing out a drama that long ago was created, and it's repetitive. That's why our founding fathers, I'm sure, were studying ancient information, ancient governments and ancient ways and teachers, because everything repeats. The ego repeats. It doesn't know anything but to repeat the same insanity. So we're at the place where I truly believe, yes, we're going to have a clash. However, the clash is not going to pull everybody down. It is going to divide us. It is going to divide us, and it won't be a clean divide. It won't be, okay, whoever wants to, you guys get to choose today. Which side do you want to be? It's not going to be that way, because the controllers want full control. They're not satisfied. The ego that is controlling is not satisfied with a little control. It wants it all. It's total to the ego. But guess what? To God, liberty is total also. And that liberty, that freedom is absolutely, thanks for joining us, Habiba, is absolutely necessary that we find our peace inside, because we will not be able to be clear in a moment of craziness. If your mind is not clear, sure, in insanity, you can still use a gun, but a gun in the hands of somebody whose mind is clear, I think is a lot more effective. And that's what I'm working on right now. So I haven't get my gun. Still want to find my inner peace and find my centeredness. But we're in an interesting time right now. We're in the time of Easter time.
So we need to remember, Laina, what it says there.
I'm entitled to miracles. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, this to me, I have found that spirituality was a wonderful doorway to becoming a more conscious human. And to me, it's not about political parties anymore. It is about patriotism, but it goes beyond patriotism for America. It's about patriotism for every human being. And that is where we have some leaders that are very clear. Their mission is the liberation of humanity. And you know what? They're going to do it with the least fallout possible, but they are going to get resistance because we are in the midst of a war. And that's what most spiritual, following Kumbaya, chanting people don't want to see, because it triggers their fears that they haven't fully addressed. Because you can easily numb your fears with spirituality. I've done it. And don't get to the core of that willingness to sell your soul for safety. So awesome conversation. Vern, thank you for your shares, your profound sharing, because it is, we have to get comfortable with that. Give me liberty or give me death, but it is a death of the ego, even if it does include the physical body. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And let me just say this. I don't want you to leave here in a state of fear that that's coming. I want you to leave here knowing that your creator, if you learn to trust your creator, you are going to find a sense of peace that is going to allow you to navigate whatever is happening. So that's the work that this is inviting us to do.
That's the work.
That's the work. Find your peace and then deal with your humanness accordingly, grounded in your peace. If not, if you're afraid, you'll be more dangerous with that gun in your hands if you're afraid.
Yeah.
It's amazing times. So God is the strength in which I trust.
It really is about, all of it is about learning self-defense. It's not about learning to go out and do something to people. And there's where a lot of people don't understand. That's people that don't understand that first do minimum harm. You can still be strong. You can still defend without being out there trying to, hurt people or kill people. Matter of fact, if you don't learn how the right way, then you become part of a mob and you become part of something that will never, ever resolve and get you where you want to be at. There's just not a whole lot going around in that area.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things, that we have to also understand is that those who think that they're in control are listening to their ego mind, and they are absolutely, it's not like there's this government of people out there that don't have an ego. It's egos that are doing what they're doing. So our ability to have a clarity that they're more afraid than we are is also part of what's going to allow us to not give in to the fear, is a recognition that if we stand up, if we together, like you're saying, Vern, we may not need to resort to violence, but with a very clear, no, we're not going to follow this. If millions of Americans came out together, if we surrounded the White House or the local state house, oh my gosh, if I'm putting this on YouTube, I wonder if it's going to get taken down.
Better watch it.
We surround peacefully with millions of people.
Yeah.
Atlanta has 6-7 million people. The million people surrounded the whatever area, they would know that we're serious. But most of us don't want to leave the comfort of our own homes. We'd rather somebody else do the work for us.
Yeah.
And therein lies the rub. How free do we want to be? As long as they do it, not me. and that's the Course wants us to wake up to yes, we have bodies for a reason. We need to learn how to use them for that. So thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for this wonderful conversation. I so appreciate you all. See
Have a
you.
great trip tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, it's going to be fun visiting my daughter. Cannot wait to see my girl and enjoy our last couple of, of days together that we get to be together without her being a mommy. And, I can still, she's still my girl before she's all busy with her baby that I know will last forever, but it's going to be so much fun. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here and thank you for your kind
Thank
words.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And remember,
Yes, we are the light of the world. Lorelai, you're too funny, too precious. Love you.
love you too.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.